So welcome everybody. My name is Sam Shorter, president of the Austin branch of the American Society of Civil Engineers. Thank you for joining us for our last hybrid meeting of the year before we go on summer break. We have an action-packed agenda here today. And just a few reminders, we are voting today for board members. And so you need to be a current ASCE member to vote. So please keep that in mind. Also, please silence your phones so we don't have any interruptions. And so this will be my last meeting presiding. Presumably there will be a new president come September. And it's kind of been surreal with COVID and coming back in person and all that. So so I know y'all are all waiting for a dance from me, but I want to thank members of the Texas section for providing our speaker today, and just glad you all could make it. So we also have committee nominations coming up. Please feel free to reach out to me or to Bradley East if you're interested in serving on one of our many committees. And that's about it. Next up, we have Mr. Tyler Doobie.
All right, good. I don't have to dance. Well, welcome everybody. My name is Tyler Doobie, and I'm your Vice President of Programs. Just lost my voice over the weekend. I found it in my front left pocket yesterday. So I hope I get through this. Just kidding, but it's a sinus infection. It's not COVID. So just full disclosure. This is our last luncheon before we break for the summer. Kind of a fun time. After today, you all have permission to go forth with your families and vacation and relax and enjoy the Texas heat. But for now, we've got you on the hook for a timely technical topic on the state of the Texas electric grid and some bright ideas on how to make it better as we head into what the weather experts say it could be another record-breaking summer in terms of heat. So anybody with announcements, it's a good time to come up and do your thing. First up, we have Bradley East.
All right, thank you, Tyler. Good afternoon. My name is Bradley East. I'm the past president and the nominations chair. We recently emailed you a proposed slate of officers for next year's board. There are no contested races. So at this time, it is my privilege to carry out the vote for next year's board of direction. So I'm going to invite our candidates up front. So when I call your name, feel free to come up and you can stand beside me. We have President Paul Hahn. We have President-elect Tyler Doobie. Vice President Programs, Kat Lauer. Secretary, Griselda Quintero. Treasurer, Augustine Berengia. Treasurer-elect, Lily Ong. Communications Director, Laura Friello. Section Director, Austin Messerly. Younger Member Director, Kaylin Hudson. And past President, Sam Shorter. So do we have a motion to approve the recommended slate of officers? Do we have a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, motion passes. Please welcome your next slate of officers, which will be officially installed in September. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank y'all.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Glenn Goldstein. I'm an Austin branch member and Texas ASCE section assistant treasurer, as well as CECON sponsorship committee member. Just want to let you know we are now fully online and live with sponsorship opportunities, exhibitor opportunities, and registration all at texascecon.org. For sponsorships, packages are available for between about just shy of $1,000 up to $3,600, and exhibitors starting at $1,250. There is this beautifully well-made prospectus with all the information available for those here in person. There are several copies on the table. If you're an ASCE member, hopefully you've received one of these at least once in your email. Please take a look through it. It's vitally important that we get sponsorships and exhibitors for the conference on September 14th through 16th in Frisco. That enables us to put together a well-executed program with exciting speakers and lots of opportunities for members to mingle and have social events while we're there. So please take a look at the prospectus and reach out to any of the CECon committee members led by Andrew Domke. And all the information is available online, texascecon.org. Thank you.
I don't have a slide for her, but I would like to introduce our Texas Section Director, Miss Jenny Peters. I figured this was a good time for you to kind of introduce yourself to our members and kind of tell us what's going on in the Texas Section world.
Thank you, appreciate it. Yes, hi everybody. I'm happy to be at the Austin branch meeting. I came in the association virtually, so I hadn't met anyone in person. So I'm slowly getting to see all these faces now. So this is my first branch meeting. Been around the state a few times in El Paso and Houston, so I'm happy to be here because our office is here. So why haven't I been to an Austin branch meeting? It's a great question. So now that I have been, I'm meeting all your faces. I'm gonna hopefully see you all a lot more. Glenn did a fabulous job letting y'all know about CECon, our big event coming up in September. So only other thing I really have is that if you are a member of obviously section branch, you just voted on your local branch officers, which is fantastic. We're also doing our section officer election right now as well. So look for your email and vote on those folks as well. Glenn is also on that ballot. So he's quite popular, very busy man. Hope everyone has a great time. I know my Beyond Storms team, and I call them mine. I feel like I know them all now because I've met them all virtually for so long. They've been doing a wonderful job traveling around the state, and I'm very excited to see this presentation in person. I hope you are as well. Thanks, guys.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kaylin Hudson. We have some exciting end of the year events. So we have our social at Bolden Acres next Thursday. Please come out and join us. And especially if you're interested in being involved in YMF next year, we would love to see you there. And then we also have our conference in August that we're hosting here as the YMF branch. And there's going to be some fun social events there and some cool speakers. So would encourage you to come out. And if you want to be involved in the planning of that, feel free to reach out to Austin. We're working on our sponsorships and social events. So thanks, everybody.
So here's our announcement for SEI. This comes from Scott Wallace. He wasn't able to be here today. So he just wanted us to know that they're taking a break for the summer, just like we do. But stay tuned for information in September about their next professional meeting. The SET conference was also postponed. If you didn't get the update from our last few meetings, they decided to try again next year. And so that's all from SEI. Next up is Griselda for our social media announcements.
Yeah, so final reminder of the year, and then I'll leave you guys alone for the summer. Check us out on YouTube. We've uploaded most of our meeting recordings to that. And then follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and we have a new LinkedIn account that I'm slowly making my way and adding everyone there. So if y'all get a connect request, please don't decline me. Yes. And if y'all have any announcements that you guys want to reach out and send through the page or through any of our social media accounts, feel free to email that to me as well. Thank you.
So as Caitlin mentioned, we're hosting the Central Region Younger Members Conference, and that's usually held in January, but due to a lot of other things that happened the last 2 years, it's got moved to August. And so this is just going to be the younger members, which usually, so it's going to be a real fun event hosted August 12th through the 14th. And we'll have younger members from as far as Michigan to Colorado and Canada, all the way down here to Texas. And so we'll be hosting at the Fans Inn. We got a lot of people coming in from all over the country. About 80 younger members is what we expect. And event registration is live. And so please reach out to your younger staff that you have in maybe your companies, as well as the younger members that we have in our groups, to make sure we get them registered, as well as mentioned, if you're looking to help kind of tighten the bow on the finalizing, getting everything on the performance and our hosting side, we are looking for a few volunteers. So we appreciate the help. Thank you.
All right, so this is the conclusion of our announcements, but next we have a sponsorship announcement from MWM Design Group presented by Ms. Annalie Gonzalez. Annalie was awarded the TSPE Young Engineer of the Year Award earlier this year, and we're glad to have her representing MWM today as the luncheon sponsor.
Hey y'all, my name is Annalie Martinez Gonzalez and I am a civil EIT at MWM Design Group. So MWM is an interdisciplinary design firm providing integrated client-focused services. Whether we're working sole source or in concert with other firms, we love teamwork and we love coordinating with all our civil engineers in Austin. Not only do we offer civil engineering, I don't know how many slides are there? Okay, there's one this way. Cool. Not only do we offer civil engineering, but we also provide surveying services, architecture, landscape architecture, and permitting. We were founded in Austin in 1980, and we want to continue serving our community in any way that we can. If you have any questions on MWM Design Group, look for me after the meeting. Thanks, y'all.
Annalie's a good sport. We have plenty of sponsors in the bank. We just forgot to tell them who was doing it this meeting. So she came through in a pinch. So thank you for that. And thank you, MWM. So next up is our featured presentation. So their full life story is in the program, and I encourage you to read all about it, about our two speakers that we have today. And actually, our two speakers have just been converted into one because they're so important. One of them had to go as an emergency presenter back to the Capitol, where these same topics that we're going to hear about today are being presented to some of our decision makers there. So I'm still going to read to you about Oliver, but we're not going to hear from Oliver today because he's pulling double duty at the Capitol. So our speakers on loan from the Texas Section's Beyond Storms Infrastructure Network Resilience Task Committee. You'll come up with a shorter name for that? INR. Okay, I'll settle for that. This was formed in the wake of the winter storms Uri and Viola. This group is a combination of public servants, private consultants, and educators, 25 total, who collected and compiled statewide data, developed a written report for various infrastructure sectors, and then analyzed the available information to put forth recommended actions for focused improvements. Members of the committee, as I said, actually split in two today to be with us. I'm actually, maybe it's 3 or 4 different presentations that are happening today. There's a lot going on with this committee, but they've split up to make sure that the message gets to us too. So very thankful to have them here. So Oliver Smith, who's down at the Capitol, holds a bachelor's and master's in civil engineering. He was commissioned as a reserve officer in the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers and was promoted to the rank of captain during his 7 years of active and reserve duty. He retired in 2017 after a 27-year career in various project and program engineering and process manufacturing and supply chain leadership roles, including for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Exxon, BASF, Frito-Lay, CH2M Hill, and 3M. He's also received numerous special recognitions within and outside of engineering. So we'll miss him, but I just wanted you to realize the caliber of experts that we've had for today's discussion. So taking over for the presentation in its entirety will be Mr. Les Pittman, a graduate of Texas A&M University. Get it out of your system. Let's hear it.
It's supposed to be a real loud whoop.
Okay, that was pretty dismal. So when we meet in September, maybe we'll have another Aggie present and y'all can try again. But Les he's got a bachelor's in civil engineering from Texas A&M and a master's from Colorado State University. He is a distinguished graduate from the Zachary Department of Civil Engineering at Texas A&M University, which I'm a Longhorn and even I know that's a big deal. So congratulations to Les on that accomplishment. Professionally, Les spent his first 10 years at LAN before co-founding Bury Pittman Incorporated in Austin, Texas. There he grew the business to 150 plus employees in 15 years with services in general civil, surveying, and landscape architecture. And Les will be sharing this presentation stage to discuss his take on the state of the grid and recommended path forward, which is backed up by his technical background, serving as a civil engineering expert witness for numerous public and private clients in the later part of his career. So thank you for being here and sharing your message with us today.
Which way is up again? Either up or right?
Left or right, up or down?
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Howdy to y'all who are not Aggies, because Aggies would know that anyway. I was one of the first Aggies in my family, so I was around other universities for a long time, and I need to learn to stand in front of the laptop. For the last 6 years of my career, till I retired a year ago in May, I was a professor of practice in civil engineering at A&M, and I taught the senior capstone class. And we went through all the pandemic, went home for spring break, and came back 2 weeks later, totally remote. And so we learned Zoom on the fly. It's a great tool. I hate it because I get to stand here, and the folks that aren't here, I'm not being derogatory toward you. I have a sarcastic sense of humor. So if you could be here, I know you would be, but got used to that. I like to teach by walking around, and I manage by walking around. And so to stand in one spot is a bit of a challenge for me. And if I could drift off, if somebody would say, Pittman, get back in front of the camera, that would help. It's great seeing Laura Friello, one of my young engineers that I hired many years ago. There she is. Keith Moody, another one, probably one or two others. I can't remember. Where's Annalie? There's, okay. Annalie came toward the time that I was leaving Austin, I guess, but yes, not? Okay. My memory's getting bad. So, okay, that's me. So one thing I wanted to say about civil engineering and what you're doing in your profession, the fact that you belong to this organization and you're here, that's really valuable. We're one of the few engineering disciplines that is really socially active in our communities. We're just different than all the others in that regard. And so it's important that you do that. Your friends and family and others really respect you. They value your opinion. We are the engineers that are going to be on school boards, church building committees, planning and zoning commissions, all of those types of things. We're going to be involved in our community, and people value that, and they'll talk to you and you can talk to them. For the most part, you've found ways to take pretty difficult technical topics and get them to a point that you can communicate with different people and get the message across. So that's really important. That's a big part of what this report was about. The 25 of us did this entire report virtually. I didn't meet Jenny until today. Okay, so she's new to the organization, but we've seen each other on computer screens. But none of the 25 have met, had met until we were finished with the report. I had a couple classmates in there. We've got to know each other more as we go and make presentations. Just to give you a little background, some people say, why are civil engineers involved in electricity? Because we don't generate electricity. We don't design power plants, most of us, some of us do. But this was really an infrastructure issue and a failure and a near catastrophic failure of a key infrastructure component within Texas. And we do infrastructure. That's what all of us do, whether it's water, wastewater, transportation, drainage, all different types of things. That's what we do. And so we said this shouldn't have happened. And what can we do to try to keep this from happening again? So, so over a period of a few weeks, we started talking and got ASCE involved. There was not unanimity within the ASCE community that we should do this. We had to do some internal salesmanship to get everybody on board about why this was important. And the purpose of this report is we did not take shots at anybody, any organization, any agency, any individuals. We looked at the entirety of what happened. We tried to look at the systematic problems. What had happened? Why did these things happen? Why did we lose power the way we did? And we'll go into that a little bit more in a couple of minutes. But it should not have happened. And our philosophy is we cannot allow it to ever happen. We came really, really close to catastrophe, and I'll mention that to y'all in a minute. So as we worked on this, we started out kind of going in one direction. As we learned more, we shifted our direction a little bit, and we got back to the reliability and resilience. That's really what infrastructure is about, right? We want it all to work. So so many people take everything for granted that we have in a society in the US today. Electricity is simple. You turn the switch on and off. How many of you know how have a fundamental understanding of how the grid works, the electric grid? Yeah, it's like 4 or 5. That's not uncommon from what we find here. How many of you would be willing to pay an extra 5% on top of your monthly electric bill if it would solve the problem and make February go away the way it had happened? So it's not going to be an inexpensive fix or an expensive fix. It can be done. So everyone turns the light switch on. They expect the power to come on, expect the light to work. No questions asked. We're like that. Just like the water. You go to the tap, you turn it on, you want the water to come on. What we also found is that in the increasing electrification of our lives, with all of the things that we have going on now that require power, make the need for reliability and resilience even more critical. As you go to EVs, all the communication systems, cell phones, these little devices here, SCADA systems for the operation of our utility systems. So reliability means when you turn it on, it's there. So resilience, though, is when I turn it on and it doesn't work, how fast can I get it working? What's the problem? What can I do to get that fixed? And that doesn't mean doesn't mean me. It means the industry. What are we doing? What happened there?
Share the screen
Oh, okay.
with our virtual folks.
Oh, so they've been sitting there just, that's tough. Used to, I would get a chat or get something, Professor Pittman, you're not sharing your screen. So, is it not working? It's not working from here now from the keyboard. That's okay. I'll let you get that going. So, so resilience is how quickly can we get a system back up, whether it's a water system, a transportation system, after a major flooding event. ASCE Texas did a major report on after Hurricane Harvey hit Houston. And that was very disruptive. A lot of things had occurred over time that just were overlooked. And they came up with a lot of recommendations, and those have been and are being implemented across the state at this time. So we're looking for recommendations that will lead to a physically stronger infrastructure on the grid side, so that we don't have situations that happened that February again. How many of you are aware that ERCOT's Reliability Council, they're the ones that manage the distribution of electricity throughout the state, that we came within 4.5 minutes of losing the entire grid that Monday morning, about 2 o'clock. We would have been without power anywhere from the state would have been without power anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months. Can you imagine that? No power at all. So no groceries, no food, no electricity at your house, no internet, no phone, no gasoline because you can't pump. We ended up with problems with gas because you can't refine either without power. So the refineries are down. Oliver would tell you a really good story about a sole source supplier they had that was down for 6 months after the power outage because it corrupted their entire processing system. They had to go through and clean it out and restart it. So the good thing is there are backup generators that would restart the grid in the event of a black start situation. We call that black start. Politicians are not going to use the black start term, and we're not out there promoting it and pushing it, but you need to be aware of it. Blackout is when you're at home or at your business and power goes off sometimes for a day or so, or depending on what's going on, maybe during a hurricane, it might be off for a week, but it's intermittent, comes back and forth, but it's going to come back up. Black start, you need the plants are down. The generating plants are down. There is no electricity being generated. So you have to restart the plants, and to restart a power plant, you have to have electricity. And so there are a series of power plants, black start generators scattered around the state that are used to provide the power that you need to restart the power plants. So then you can start bringing the generators up and start generating electricity. There are 13 of those primary generators in the state. During the 2 winter storms, 9 of those 13 were interrupted, were not available. So that was a loss of 69% of your primary backup, first level backup. Secondarily, there were 15 other generators. 12 of those failed. So 80% of the secondary failed. So basically we were 64% relied solely on natural gas. And we'll talk a little bit about gas because so much of the electricity produced now is produced from natural gas. And when the grid started going down, when they started shutting off power to different areas, the natural gas business is highly electrified. The systems in the wells in the fields, the controls, the compressor stations, the communication systems, all operate off of electricity. So when all of that was cut back, all of those gas fields, those wells stopped producing, and the gas stopped being prepared for transport. And so when we did that and lost gas, 64% of those units that were sole sourced by gas were not even available. So you can see it was just a series of cascading events, each one worse than the one before it, leading to a real dangerous situation. I have a good friend who's a mechanical engineer. He's since retired from LCRA. He worked at one of their power plants. That Monday morning about 2 o'clock. I just got a text from him. He said, we are in major trouble. And then we went on from there the rest of the week. So we talk about in our analysis of the situation, it wasn't that the gas guys were bad or the generators were bad or the transmission people were bad or the regulators were bad. It was what happened. How did we get here? Why did that happen? And what can we do? And just identifying those things and saying those need to be fixed. We're not going to fix them. We civil engineers are not necessarily going to fix them. We'll be involved in it, but we're just trying to point these things out so the people who need to go fix it can go fix it. So there was a combination of revenue insufficiency. This gets into some business. if somebody's going to not pay you to do something, you're probably not going to do it, right? There's a little anecdote that goes around right now. I don't know how many New York Yankee fans we have. I was one as a little kid. There's one, okay. But what would it be like if the only Yankees that were paid were the players on the field, and the people in the players in the dugouts, and everybody in the dugout didn't get paid anything? Matter of fact, they weren't there. How successful would they be as a team? So the same thing happened here. As there were people expecting energy providers and gas providers to be available, but nobody had been paying them, so they weren't prepared. They weren't going to be prepared. And so they didn't perform. Interdependence was a real issue with electronics and how we communicate, how things have changed. The PC had not really been invented when I started in engineering. I remember seeing the first word processor in an office. AutoCAD came out the year I started my company in the early mid 80s. So everything was done differently. So now we all rely on that. And how things are done is really important. And people need to realize how you intermix those, how they interconnect, how do you communicate? So in your offices, when the internet goes down, that's a problem. The power goes off at your office, that's a different problem. So, and if you have a software licensing problem, it's another issue. Just take that and put it on a statewide scale for the energy grid. And then the final thing was realize that the consequences of all these failures are bad, and the risk is not going away. We can't just ignore them. We can't look away and said, that happened once, it's never going to happen again. We can't do that. So we started off, we're good engineers, right? So the first place that some of our folks wanted to go, well, this was a once in 100-year storm or once in 150-year storm. And so we said, if we go that direction, we're going to end up arguing about the return frequency of storms. And that's not what the issue is. The issue was we had an unseasonably cold period. It was forecast. We knew it was coming. We knew a week ahead of time how cold it was going to be and roughly how long it was going to last. And so we said, we'll talk about the weather event, but we're not going to give a return frequency to that storm. And in fact, when we went back and looked at historical data for the last 100, 125, 150 years, these things have occurred in Texas. Maybe not quite as widespread, but they affected more people because we've got many more people. We're become much more urbanized. We're more concentrated in cities. We have a lot of people from the very cold parts of the state to the north, Dallas, Fort Worth, to the much warmer parts of the valley. But all of those things, how those systems operated, how air conditioning and heating systems operated, impacted the power demand. We found that ERCOT did not have a model for a winter storm event. We don't blame them. Yes, sir. Can we focus just a little bit? I don't know if that will focus better. I don't control the focus on here, I don't think. Or maybe on the camera. There you go. That's better. Thanks. Thank you for pointing that out. And if y'all have any questions, feel free to bring them up. But we also realized that winter storm was an event that pointed out problems that we had, and we need to take advantage of that situation. Go look at those problems because we're going to have those problems because of summer heat. We already know that. The winter storm was a curveball that caught everybody. And so, so we went in that direction. So we started off kind of looking at the storm return frequency, and then we moved over to looking at weather events. And that led us to, we really need to be looking at just the results of that particular event. And there were actually 2 storms, not just one, when you get into it. I'll skip past the definitions. Y'all have this presentation, you can look at it. Also the entire report, the executive summary, as well as the full report are available on the ASCE Texas website. You can get to it from there. It's really exciting reading. I suggest you read the executive summary first. It's a little shorter and it'll get you where you need to be. There's a definition of black start. It's not at the top. We're not trying to scare everybody, but it's a fact and we need to be aware of that. The key component of what we did talk about and what's going on with the legislature now is the difference between an energy only market and a capacity market. That's the political decision that's going on. How are they going to change that? That came about 20 years ago. And that is, in our opinion, that's part of the problem. That's where if you're not getting paid to be on standby, you're not going to be on standby. You're just not going to be there. The deaths that came out of the storm or numbers are all over the place. I think the official number was around 246, mostly hypothermia. But there were a lot of other people who died from lack of oxygen because they couldn't get oxygen because they had no power, things like that. They couldn't get to a doctor's office, hospitals. I know hospitals that ran out of water, things like that. So there were probably quite a few more than that. 24 million Texans lost power for at least 42 hours. That's what, a day and a half, almost 2 days, that half of the state, over half of the state was without power. The longest we were without it at my house in Bryan was for about 12 hours, and the 2-hour rolling blackouts never worked. It was on and off, usually on for 15, 20 minutes, off for 3 hours. And I belong to Bryan as a municipal utility, just like the city of Austin. So if you're Austin's municipal utility, which were different than a lot of the others, 49% of Texans lost access to potable water for 2 or more days. Y'all went through that pretty severely here with the city of Austin. We never lost water at our house in Bryan, but I spent the better part of a day going door to door. I live in an area with a lot of older people turning off water valves because they had busted pipes. They had no idea where their valves were. And you weren't going to get a plumber to come. The plumbers were busy. And then if you had something that you needed to fix, you couldn't fix it because the parts houses were closed too. 71% of Texans lost internet service. Our estimate of the cost using national data, as our committee pulled together, about $2 to $3 billion, $100 billion in economic impacts. About 50 billion in disputes and climbing. That's a result of when, if you remember, ERCOT kind of stepped in and they changed the rate for electricity to the $9,000 per kilowatt hour, trying to generate more electricity. There was no electricity to generate. It could have been $1 million per kilowatt hour. There was no supply. It didn't matter. But most of us got on the hook for that because some people tried to generate that. Bryan Utilities is on the hook for about $40 million to reimburse the state over that. College Station is $50 million. Austin's going to have a number. They don't publicize it. They don't talk about it. They're putting it out. It's out there and it's being taken care of. There were bankruptcies. 2 electric co-ops went bankrupt in Texas. And so all the other co-ops picked up the slack of that. So there's a lot of things that you just don't read about because it's pretty complex. And again, we're not trying to blame people. We're just trying to make people aware of what happened and what can we do to make things better. This is a slide that'll go through costs per kilowatt hour. I'll let you look at that at your leisure. Wait till this fall with everything that's going on just energy wise. It's going to be, I know I'm on natural gas from my utility. Gas prices have already doubled. So that's going to natural gas prices have already doubled. So that's going up. Electricity will go up as well. This is just a graph that kind of shows you how things led up to what happened. The really bad part is that dip way down there at the bottom on the toward the lower right-hand corner. I didn't prepare the slideshow, so I can do my standard. You don't put a slide up if your audience can't read it. But this slide is in this presentation. Just be aware, you can start seeing how things started to deteriorate, and they deteriorated fairly rapidly. And in the course of our of gathering data for our report, most people did not want to talk to us. You know, you're not going to have the city of Austin, those speakers, we'll use them, beat up on them. City of Austin is not going to come talk to us about shortcomings that they had and that they want everybody to know about. They're going to take care of their business. Bryan Utilities is the same way. Everybody was the same way. Everybody was taking care of their business. They're not going to go say the problems that they had. That's human nature. Nothing wrong with that. So we had to get pretty creative about how we gathered information, considering people weren't really willing to talk. And I don't know that we even attempted the city of Austin, so don't get mad at them and say they wouldn't talk to us. 'Cause I doubt that we approached them anyway. But we had to go find that. So we used our relationships. One of the best things about these types of meetings like this, you're getting to know people. And like I said, I know Keith, I know Laura, Anna Maria again, I'm getting caught up. There's probably a few others. You're going to know people that are sitting in this room that you're going to crisscross paths with the rest of your career. Then you start going back, who might I be able to talk to that might know something about this? I saw one guy on this team that I hadn't seen since the day we graduated in 1974. He was in the transmission side of things. So you just never know where your paths are going to cross. Value these relationships, get to know people, exchange business cards. It's really important. So the guy who helped me was the guy that worked at LCRA, who's since retired, he's a mechanical engineer. And he said, we got a problem. And I didn't understand how the grid worked. I don't understand frequency. I go turn the light switch on, it works. Water systems, we vary. What ideal is 55 PSI, is where we like to be. Maybe 60 if we got enough money to pressurize things more. What's the low point? 20, around 20 PSI. If you get below that, you got to flush your system, boil water until you disinfect and all that. Pretty wide swing, right? That doesn't happen with the power grid. You got about a 0.3 or a 0.4% variance off of the 60 cycle per second power grid. And if it gets below that, things start shutting down. They shut down automatically because you've got a lot of equipment, a lot of big equipment, rapidly moving parts, a lot of momentum. And if you don't shut those things down appropriately, you're going to damage a lot of equipment. And if you think the supply chain is bad now for everything, wait till you try to go buy transformers or generators or turbine blades or anything else. They're not out there. It's going to take years to buy those parts. So that's basically a self-defense mechanism built into the system. This was a graphic that kind of shows a little bit more about the timeline and what went on as the storm event came. And if you were like me, I knew it was coming. I thought I was ready. I was pretty ready. We had water. We got water. We had some food and all of that. And I had my little extra battery backups for my phone and those kind of things. But even I didn't think it was going to be as bad as it was. And it was really a mess. The biggest problem that we ultimately had was the shutdown of the Permian Basin gas fields. How many of y'all know that natural gas has water in it? Okay, so again, we're small. Natural gas just naturally has water in it. You know what some of the highest water concentration of natural gas is in Texas? Permian Basin. So when it started freezing out there, first off, certain things started going offline. And if you go back to your physics class, and I can't remember that, but when you go through valves and stuff, you start reducing pressure and all the things, that's where things are going to freeze. And so there had been warnings 11 years ago, 12 years ago, from a major storm in the Dallas area to winterize power plants. Some did, a lot didn't. But most of the people in the field didn't do that. So one of my cousins is an instrumentation guy. So I could talk to him. You know, Gerald, what the heck's happening? What's going on? So he walked us through that, and then I could talk to some other guys, and that'll put them on to other people. And we gathered information that way about what was going on. This is a graphic that shows where the outages and the loss of power came from. The challenge with some of the ERCOT models, they by design have a significant wind and solar component. I'm not opposed to those. I think those are great. They ought to be in every system. But I think most of us being engineers, if the wind isn't blowing, the turbine isn't generating. But the turbine's still drawing power off the system while it's sitting there. If the sun isn't shining, the solar panels aren't generating power either. So some of those assumptions, as small as they were that were in the models, created problems. And nobody really thought, well, what happens if that happens? But the real problem in this particular situation was that so much of the power generation had gone to gas because of clean energy, coal plants were shutting down. Gas was a cleaner fuel. More and more of those came online. And then all of a sudden, we've got that problem. So we formed a team. There were 3 stages to it. Our preliminary, figuring out what we were going to do, prioritizing things, getting people assigned to teams. So if Jenny ever calls you or anybody at the ASCE state level calls you and says, hey, we'd like for you to serve on a committee, offer to do it, or you could do like most of us did. We just volunteered. We didn't wait. We were pushing. We weren't waiting to be asked about it. And then it took a while to put the report together. We were very careful about words and about statements that we made. We didn't want to, and the biggest compliment we've gotten from everybody, including the PUC, from LCRA, from, and I think we'll get them from the legislature this afternoon, was that we didn't take shots. We didn't try to blame anybody. We're just trying to point out things that we see as infrastructure professionals and things that need to be looked at by the appropriate agencies, organizations, and taken care of however they need to be taken care of. And we will help however we can. So there's different aspects to the whole process. How the system was designed. The power grid was designed 100 years ago, and it is what it is. And it's alternating current. It's in the United States, it's 60 hertz per second. That's not going to change. There's a discussion, well, why didn't we connect up to the 2 grids on either side of us? Those grids weren't actually available to help us at that point in time. There are some small DC interconnects between those systems, but and there are dozens of island grid systems throughout the world. Any island has its own grid system. It's not interconnected to somewhere else. So we're not unique in that regard. We're Texans. We need to take care of our own stuff. Okay, that's where we're coming from. We get back to revenue insufficiency. People were expected to keep stuff available on the sideline without getting paid. And surprisingly, those people did not do that. People that were paid to be prepared weren't prepared, and there were no penalties for them. That's another aspect. If you're getting paid to be there and we call you and says, okay, start generating, and you don't, there was no penalty for them. And so that's a big part of our recommendation, is re-looking at the marketing system, how we need that to happen. Creep, we've all been involved in creep in our jobs and careers, right? You do it in material science, right? To do little metal ingots, and you analyze creep in metals. Well, the same thing happens here, is over time, over the last 20 or 30 years, the grid and how the grid operates and all the different components of it have changed. I used to have a house at Lake LBJ, and the water intake for Kingsland Water Supply Corp was right next in the lot next to me. I loved it. There was no parties there. There was never anybody there. When I bought the place, they were there every day checking on stuff. By the time I sold that house, nobody came to that site unless there was a problem, unless they got a remote alarm back to the headquarters that says there's a problem down at the intake. You need to go down there and take a look at it. And that's what happened here with creep. Things changed and people weren't on top of it. So the weather, the Tmax was the number of days that we were below 32 degrees. Tmin for 24 hours. Tmin was just the days that we were below it for an hour. We know that the grid was a material contributor to the economic loss and the loss of life. We can't have that happen again. We know that ERCOT focuses on an energy-only model. We don't think that's acceptable. We think they need to look at a different way to do that. A lot of the intermittency issues were modeled away. My graduate work was in computer models, groundwater quality models. I could make the answers come out whatever I wanted them to come out. If I didn't want the right answer, I could finagle my model to give me the answer I wanted. And so a lot of times when people are doing models, they're maybe looking for certain answers instead of looking for the right answer, which may be very uncomfortable. You have to look at root causes, how we got here, what made that happen. And then looking at the culture of ERCOT. All of y'all work in an organization, and you probably work there partly because of the culture of that organization. If you don't like the culture, you're probably going to move on and go somewhere else. I used to recruit based upon culture. If you didn't want to do this, this, and this, my company was not the right place for you to work. because that's how we were going to do things. But I would help you find something in a company that would better fit your wants. Doesn't mean that one was right and one was wrong. They're just different. Except ERCOT is the only entity in the state that deals with our energy supply or distribution, actually. They're not in the generation business. They're not in the natural gas business. Their goal is their job at this point is to divvy up the electricity that's consumed every day and how that's done. Gas supply, there's interruptible and non-interruptible. That's really important. So many of the energy companies didn't know that they did not have a firm source of gas supply or a firm transport of gas, even if they had the gas supply. Just because I own so many million cubic feet in West Texas doesn't mean I own the ability to transport it through a pipeline to my power plant in Dallas. Okay, two components. They didn't know what they didn't know. And we're trying to point that out. And we can improve all of this at a modest cost. That's another thing we're trying to get across. That's with the legislature too. This isn't going to cost $100 billion. It's very nominal to get it fixed and get it going in the right direction. So our top 5 issues and recommendations are to invest in black start generation, to make sure that those systems are there when we need them, fix the regulatory flaws that negatively impact dispatchable generation, mitigate the growing interdependency, those electronic communication components that nobody really thinks about, making sure everybody knows what they're doing, to prioritize reliability and resiliency. We're all dealing with those 2 words in everything we do, right? Doesn't matter where you're dealing with water, transportation, traffic signals, drainage. You want it to be reliable, and when something goes wrong, how fast can I get it back up and running? The resilience component. And then replace process and model biases to get us where we need to be. We need to think beyond the physical. This is a lot about rules and regulations and markets. And it's about the infrastructure ecosystem. So it's all of those things coming together. And that's why it wasn't our goal. This wasn't ASCE standing up and said, we can tell you how to fix this. What ASCE did says, here are problems that we see, and here are things that we are seeing based upon our experience and other infrastructure systems that we own, operate, and manage, and just put it out there and hopefully go out and give our message and get the decision makers on board to solve the problem. We do not want to be where we were 4.5 minutes away from. It is going to be a political rather than a technical issue. There's a lot of technical components, but it's a political situation now, okay? And just be aware of that. And so we're all, our companies and our organizations, we support candidates, we promote things that are good. That's what we do as civil engineers. So you need to let your state reps, your state senators know that this is important. You need to educate yourself a little bit about it. Do a lot better job of talking about it than I did today. And we need to get this information out there sooner rather than later. This is the reason the timing is working good, is because the legislature is going through all their markups, getting bills ready to file. They'll be back in session in January. You got to start a year or 2 out in front. So the timing has really worked out pretty good. Finally, just keep asking why. Why did things not work? What happened? There's emerging, I don't get the term right. If you recall, during the storm, there were certain areas that didn't have their power turned off, right? Hospitals, fire stations, key elements of your city. To be on that list, you have to file with ERCOT. It's a paper form. It was a paper form, may still be a paper form. There were several hundred of those at the time the storm hit. There are now over 60,000 of those on file. Now, the cynical Les Pittman goes, does that mean we just have 60,000 more pieces of paper and a box checked, or what are we doing to make sure that we can handle it? And we need to demand different perspectives and inputs. Everybody needs to work together. Railroad Commission, who's oil and gas, was over here. The PUC, which is electricity and water and wastewater, was over here. They weren't really talking to each other. They are starting to talk to each other. The governor has changed the boards, the members of some of those boards. I think they're all Texas residents now. We had a lot of non-Texas residents on there. They thought it was a nice resume enhancer. I think they found out it wasn't necessarily so. So get involved, be aware of those types of things. You can go back here. These are all summarized in the report, the recommendations by these different categories. There's going to be webinars through ASCE in the fall, typically roughly on each of these categories. So be on the lookout for those, sign up for those and watch. I think there'll be different people doing those presentations. We're also doing some face-to-face similar things with different groups in different cities. The legislature's working. Here's things they're working on because there's so many different entities, PUC, ERCOT, Railroad Commission, a lot of different folks, a lot of different cultures. Those agencies have cultures, ingrained cultures. One of the challenges that we found is ERCOT is pretty much a transmission line culture. They're not really on the power generation. They're not on the gas side. And so they recognize that now, that they need to probably diversify the makeup of their staff to help with this. So I went a few minutes long, but be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Yes, sir.
I have more of a comment, sir, and I think that diversity of the system is something that's we've lost a lot because of the 6 coal-fired plants. And having been to other states like Milwaukee, you can build power plants that are very environmental. And losing 6 plants, I mean, that was a huge loss.
Yeah, part of what we found is you're moving around, like we had some of the wind turbines froze. Well, wind turbines don't have to freeze. If Oliver was here, he would tell you from his time in Michigan that the wind turbines in Michigan did not freeze when it was 50 below zero. They kept working. So there's things like that we just need to talk to people and get information from. And a lot of it's emotional. And so on whether natural gas is clean or not. Europe has closed down most of their coal plants, and then gas wasn't available. And then a war came along and they're in a world of hurt over there. We're not there yet. Hopefully we don't get there. Yes, sir.
Would you be able to articulate what the engineering, non-political reasons are for not considering joining some of the national power grids?
I think it'll be looked at because people have said that. I think it's the connecting points and where their power sources are relative to where our demand is. Another challenge that we're facing is a lot of especially the wind sources of power are not where the population centers are. So that becomes a transmission issue. Not so sure about the solar, how that's working out. So I would look around, read. We have all done a lot of reading. There's Barron's, Wall Street Journal, a lot of different business focused publications have a lot of information on this. You can usually search and find good information about it. And a lot of that, some of that's going to be political because there's a lot of, my kids live in New York and New Jersey, okay? They both went to A&M, but then they ran off because they hated hot weather primarily. They're holding my grandkids hostage. So, but in all honesty, there's a lot of anti-Texas animosity. And so people would like to, if they can penalize us in some ways, they'd like to see it. By the same token, we're pretty proud of who we are. We're pretty independent. We like to do things our way and kind of let everybody else do their things their way. So it's all of those things, those culture, those societal things that have happened over time. So, yes, ma'am.
Well, discuss diversification of the sources of energy or the ways that energy is generated as part of this work.
We didn't get into it specifically other than that through deregulation, solar and wind has become a significant percentage of the total power of the grid. I think it's bumping 40 to 50% now. During the storm, most of that wasn't available. So you lost half of your grid, right? Power generation right there. And then with the natural gas issues, you lost even more. So like I said, we're all in favor of all different sources. Hydropower is a key component. Hydro is one of the black starts that was available on the Highland Lakes and in certain different places where we have, you don't need a lot, but you have to have power to start a power plant. Can't start cold. Any other questions? Thank you all very much for having us. We really appreciate it.
We appreciate you being here. We've got an ASCE themed tumbler for you to take home.
I'll do that. I do need to get a picture, or did Jenny, did you get a picture? Do you want to get a, no, just the whole kind of the group that you can use to document that we were actually here?
Document, prove that you were here.
Yes. Thank y'all very much.
All right. Well, we want to thank Les and the Texas section for this engaging presentation. It's good to have an unbiased look at what happened and get some civil engineers looking at the electric problem. I'm kidding. So anyways, thank you all for attending again. I'd like to ask our membership chair, Griselda, our head count today. Excellent. Well, that concludes our luncheon today. I want to remind you that we are on break for the next 2 months, but we will be back in the month of September, where I hope I'll see you there. This meeting is adjourned.
Everyone.